What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like, imixwhatilike.org, at I Mix What I Like for all your relevant social media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to play host. And it's been a while since we've done one of these sort of webcam discussion interviews, but since we can't get in the same place to get her in the car for an Academics in Cars, we figured we would do the best we can to reach out to my favorite columnist, Margaret Kimberley of Black Agenda Report. Welcome to the program. It's good to catch up with you again, Margaret.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
So among many other things, being among my favorite columnists, you were also engaged in a campaign with some comrades of mine, most notably from the PanAfrican Community Action organization here in the DC area, and nationally and internationally, Black Alliance for Peace, with Ajamu Baraka, among many others. And you all are engaged in a new program or campaign that centers the Africa Command, or AFRICOM. So if you would first tell us a little bit, just for those who need a little summary, including myself, what is the Africa Command? And then what is this new campaign all about?
Sure. Well, Black Alliance for Peace was founded last year, 2017, April 4th, 2017, a significant date. It was the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech at Riverside Church, in which he publicly stated his opposition to the war in Vietnam, which was a huge event. And so on April 4th, 1967, King stated his opposition to the war, and which was significant because it was quite a revolutionary act. Everyone said that LBJ, that President Johnson was a quote unquote friend to the civil rights movement, and he couldn't be offended and he shouldn't be insulted. And King's own colleagues, his own father, told him it was a foolish thing to do. The New York Times and the Washington Post excoriated him. And that tells us the right thing to do, actually, that he spoke up for his people. At a time when the United States was, as he put it, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, spending millions of dollars to kill people in Southeast Asia and not meeting the needs of people here at home. So that 50th anniversary was a significant date for Black Alliance for Peace to come into being. And we want to uphold that tradition that Black people have had of being the group that speaks out against U.S. involvement abroad, that speaks out against interventions and invasions and subversion of other governments, that speaks out against this U.S. Africa Command. This is the 10th anniversary of the founding of AFRICOM. It was the tail end of the Bush administration, but AFRICOM really expanded under Obama. And almost every African country, save for 2 or 3, are now part of AFRICOM, which means the United States controls their military. And this is obviously dangerous for African countries to lose their sovereignty and their independence, to be under the thumb of the United States, to be a staging ground for US actions. Although it's interesting, the headquarters for AFRICOM is actually in Germany. No African country was willing to actually host.
You know, Margaret, while we had this quick pause, I did think it's interesting that Africa Command is warehoused in Germany, given that's also the location where the Berlin Conference famously took place in 1884, 85, where Africa was, as we know it, was created. So
yes.
But if you could just say a quick word, and I think it relates actually to the Berlin Conference, how exactly does AFRICOM work in terms of, as you said, running the armies or the militaries of these African countries? And then what kinds of things do we see play out as a result?
Well, the United States has in effect divvied up the world. And there are these commands. There's a CENTCOM and a SOUTHCOM and another COM, which it's a manifest destiny, essentially, that the United States claims this right to control pretty much any part of the world that it wants to, and that it can just announce, well, we're going to include Africa as one of our commands, and that these African nations go along with it. They get money. Their leaders get money. This is money for our military, the U.S. military-industrial complex. So one hand washes the other, and it's unfortunate because that means African people lose their sovereignty. It means that if people in Niger don't want to be affiliated with the United States, if they want to be a non-aligned nation, they can't be. They must fight their own government. And we usually don't hear about it until about a year ago when US soldiers were killed in Niger, for example. People never heard of it, don't know how to pronounce it, are afraid to say it because it sounds too much like the slur. But there are thousands of US troops there. There are drone bases throughout Africa. So it's a problem for African people, obviously. It's a problem for us because we live in this empire that sucks our public resources. More than half of the federal budget goes to defense. And these various commands around the world is where all this money goes. And I think it's funny that everyone talks about Trump. He's a racist, he's a moron, he's a psycho, he's a traitor, he's this, he's that. But they all gave him an additional $70 billion in his defense budget. And that's money that could be used for any number of things. We could have Medicare for all. We could end homelessness. There are any number of free college. I could go on and on. But
and I thought about what you just said, especially in the last couple of days, and that so-called study that came out that said that we basically can't afford Medicare for all because of some stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking how these numbers are real funny here. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, nobody, when it comes to anything that helps people, free education, Medicare for all, somebody always, including Democrats, will say, where's that money going to come from? But no one ever asks that question, or very few people ask that question when the issue is about defense spending. They can afford tax cuts for billionaires. They can afford to buy new airplanes and aircraft carriers and drone bases and send American troops all over the world. I just discovered one of my young relatives who's in the Army is now stationed in Poland. Because, well, that's another story. This is all against Russia. We're told Russia is the aggressive nation, but we have the U.S. has U.S. troops literally on their border. So it's problematic for a lot of reasons. But
Margaret, why specifically, just very quickly, I'm sitting here with, we mentioned Pan-African Community Action. I'm sitting here with my red, black, and green flag behind me. Why should Black Americans or Africans in America or New Africans or however people want to identify, why should Black folks here who have any number of problems to deal with be thinking about Niger or an African continent at all, or be moved by a Black Alliance for Peace call to be concerned about Africa Command? How does that work? What is that?
Well, we have many of the problems we have because there is an Africa Command, because the United States is this empire. The very basic needs that we have are not met because of U.S. imperialism. They choose to, as I was just saying, they choose to spend money on things that are harmful to the rest of the world and that are harmful to us. They choose deliberately not to spend money on anything that will help the masses of Black people. They will spend money to keep us in jail. There's always millions of dollars for new jails. There's always millions of dollars for the police. There's always city after city they give money to real estate developers to displace us. They give money there. One city is about to give money to Jeff Bezos, the richest man on the planet, for an Amazon headquarters. And as sure as we're both sitting here, Amazon will have been given free land, tax abatements. They'll build a highway for them. Whoever wins actually will be the loser. But that's the kind of thing that goes on in this country because of these priorities. And we have these misplaced priorities foisted upon us because of our capitalist system and because of imperialism. Also, the aggression that the U.S. shows around the world is mirrored in the aggression meted out to us as individual Black people in the mass incarceration system, in police murders, 1,000 people a year. I always say that it's 3 people every day on average killed by the police in this country. And this is an exact mirror of the aggression that goes on around the world. So we definitely have a stake in speaking out about international issues.
I do want to just follow up quickly on that, because we hear so much, and so many people who end up in my classroom, for instance, selfishly thinking of it at that level. We hear so much of the antagonisms between among people in the African diaspora. West Indians, people of the Caribbean, so-called, don't like Black Americans, don't like continental Africans, vice versa. We hear so much of, so again, if so much of the popular conversation seems to be about how people from the rest of the diaspora outside of the United States don't like Black Americans, why again is it important that, or maybe I'll just say it this way, it seems like you're saying, even if it's an issue that goes beyond whether or not we like one another, there's a political necessity or a political, necessity to that sort of connection of struggles. But how would you respond to that? If you, because I know we hear this all the time. We don't get along. Why should,
Well, I just don't think it's true. We can listen, anecdotally, you can always find a Nigerian who looks down on Black Americans. You can find a Jamaican who says Jamaica is better. Yes, anecdotally, you can find these instances. I've encountered them myself. But the opposite is also true. There's a lot of feeling of solidarity among the peoples of the diaspora. And that's why they work so hard to divide us. Because if we ever did coalesce, if we ever did work together, it would be a great danger to this system. So I don't pay attention to that too much. And as an individual, obviously, I don't like it if someone else says something negative about me and other Black Americans, but I'm not going to take it that seriously either, that I allow myself to be fooled by foolishness. And making these broad generalizations about West Indians say this or Africans say that. I think we need to be more mature.
So thank you for that. I appreciate that. We don't have that much time, or I don't have that much time, but there's a lot that I would want to talk to you about that I have to at least make some attempt at. As my comrade is we're gearing up for this year's annual Hate Awards. We have a segment that's going to be Shock and Kavanaugh. So I thought I would ask you how you think, or how you've been arguing we should interpret this moment with all this discussion of Kavanaugh, of Me Too, of even the value of the Supreme Court and our attention, the spectacle that all of this has become. Especially in light of a piece that we've been re-airing at I Mix What I Like, that Bashi Rose and I put together, that featured a speech you gave before the last election regarding Bernie Sanders and the Black electorate. What just anything that I've said there, where are you arguing we should be situating ourselves and interpreting this moment?
Well, I think my general spiel, if you will, about politics is that we must dump the Democratic Party. And Kavanaugh is Exhibit A. Anyone who questions the Democratic Party, anyone who says, why should we vote, or why can't we vote for the Green Party or someone else, we're immediately told you must support the Democrats because of the federal judiciary. Even if you don't like anything they do, you don't want the Republicans to control the Supreme Court and the rest of the federal courts. What do the Democrats do? They lose the Senate. They lose the Senate because of their own corruption, because they're bought off. They can't get people out to support them because they don't stand for anything that people need. Then they mess up and they even lose the presidency to Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton raised $1 billion and then couldn't get 80,000 more votes in those states that flipped to prevent Trump from winning. We are in this situation because of the Democratic Party. And now we have a Republican-controlled Senate, a Republican president. They're going to push Kavanaugh through, and Democrats can't do anything about it. So instead of talking about how they're going to revive themselves politically, because they know how to do it. They know if they're serious about raising the minimum, if they're serious about Medicare for all, they know they will win. But their corporate and wealthy funders are not going to stand for that. So they constantly try to squeak through an election with nonsense, with superficial issues. And the result is Republican control. That's why we're stuck with this Kavanaugh nomination. As far as the sexual assault allegations, I'm glad they've come up. I'm glad these women have come forward. Very courageous for them to have done so. But unfortunately, this as drama. That is all it is drama.
You were saying just a moment ago about the abuse allegations that so many women are coming forth with has been turned into a drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, that has actually been one of the biggest concerns I've had with this, as many other issues, or any other issue as it's brought up and put into sort of the pop cultural, pop political milieu, which is that so many fake progressive efforts seem to attach themselves to these very righteous concerns and then lead us right back programmatically or prescriptively to the same, just as you were saying, coming back to the Democratic Party, to the same spaces that produce or benefit from the problems in the first place. So could you go from where you were just a second ago talking about the drama that has come up around all of the allegations of sexual misconduct or abuse or full out rape, and what again, interpretively or practically, we should be doing in response?
Sure. The thing we need to be most serious about is talking about a new politics. We have to get rid of the Democrats. They are the cause of almost all of our problems. It's either them not opposing. They don't even act like a real opposition. Tom Perez, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, a couple of days ago, admitted that they would still support any Democrats who voted for Kavanaugh. So what's the point? So we depend on these Democrats in name only. They're barely Democrats, but we're told vote blue no matter who. But at the same time, we're told that Kavanaugh is, the devil incarnate, but it's okay for Democrats to vote for him. It's a farce. The entire thing is a farce. And the sooner we talk about how to get rid of the Democrats, and they've done a masterful job of gaslighting millions of people who depend on them to vote. Ever since Hillary Clinton lost, it's funny. If anybody should be marching around with torches, it should be Democrats. It shouldn't be the alt-right. People should have marched on John Podesta's house on election night in 2016. But there has been no discussion. They point fingers. It's the fault of the Green Party. It's the fault of Sanders. It's never their fault, by the way. It's always only the fault of the left. Hillary Clinton gets to hang around and settle scores and ruin she's a poison. She's an absolute poison on this country. They point at Russia. Russiagate has been whipped up to kills a couple of birds with one stone. Of course, it furthers the imperial agenda, and it keeps people shut up about what the Democrats did that put Trump in office. It is true that and I'm going on, digressing a little bit, they did spy on Trump, and they did it because he was talking about things that oppose the neoliberal consensus, not because they care that he's a racist. They don't even dislike him for the reason they should dislike him. So, and if the truth ever comes out, Trump will end up looking like the injured party. But anyway, that's another story. I've gone off a little
Well, I mean,
bit.
I was actually glad you were saying that, because part of I think one of the other problems that I've seen come up when just the points you raise are raised is the use of Russia to bring people, as another way of bringing people back safely into the confines. And that's why the Democrats and the so-called liberal media, and you were talking about off-air, MSNBC is the Fox News for Democrats or liberals, is doing the same thing. Everything is Putin's fault. Everything is Russia's fault. It's in the narratives, not coincidentally, of a lot of our popular media and TV and film dramas, the same language of useful idiots, and Russia's behind everything that goes wrong in this country, from racism to poverty. And yet the evidence is sparse, misleading, confusingly distributed. So as we wrap up, I'll just say, say anything you'd like to say about that moment, or this moment, or the drama that we've just described here. And then, maybe connect it back to this Black Alliance for Peace agenda. And we'll certainly link to the campaign that we started off discussing here today.
Well, this is all particularly dangerous for Black people because the Republicans are the white people's party. We cling to the Democrats desperately just to keep the Republicans out. And I understand why that is the case. But first of all, they haven't kept the Republicans out. They haven't even, we overlook and don't question and silence ourselves to help the Democrats win, and they don't even win. So this to me is a perfect moment to question everything that we have been told we must do politically, to get rid of this, as we call it, the Black Agenda Report, the Black misleadership class. We should not be afraid to do something different. It is a necessity. Where has doing the same thing gotten us? It's gotten us Trump, it's gotten us Kavanaugh, it's gotten us all these things that we are terrified of, and keep doing the same thing but expect a different result. It is time to talk about how to get out of this box, this trap that Black people find themselves in. And part of our campaign about AFRICOM, we have a petition on change.org asking the Congressional Black Caucus to take the lead in ending AFRICOM. And we can't be afraid to take them on either. Where have Black people gotten worshiping these quote unquote leaders and these members of the Black Caucus, among others? So we have to take on some of our own. We cannot be afraid. We have to ask ourselves, where have we gotten doing the same thing? We've gotten nowhere. Black people are still, we're the worst off people in the country. We catch more hell than anybody. Any negative metric, we're always at the top. Any positive metric, we're always at the bottom. And still we, think our lives would be better if Hillary Clinton were president instead of Donald Trump. And that's all the Democrats offer to us, is like, well, we're not out and out racist. We're not promoting crackerism, which is, I don't know if that's a word. I guess I created it. But anyway, that's as much as we can expect. And that would be considered a big victory to have someone like Hillary Clinton in office, who, by the way, was even afraid to call Trump a racist. A couple of days ago, she had an interview in the Washington Post, and she was asked, reporter asked her, is racist? And she would not say yes. So who was she playing to? She's not even running for office anymore. So she's still the Goldwater girl, an absolute phony, a danger to us, a poison on this country. We have to look at something new, like Black Alliance for Peace, like talking about how we practice self-determination instead of upholding these people who either do us in or whose corruption has made them completely ineffective.
Well, Margaret Kimberley, thanks again for joining us here at I Mix What I Like. Thanks for all your work at blackagendareport.com and for your continued support of Black Alliance for Peace and many other great groups and causes, and for your stance with us against crackerism.
Thank you, Chapman.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like.